I don't like having my door open. It makes me feel exposed. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my most surprising reads of 2020. These are books that either I had no expectations for going into, or obviously I had lower expectations than how these books actually turned out. I don't actually own any of them, at least physically. Quite a few of them are audiobooks that I own, or I checked them out from my library or read them on Scribd. So you're just going to be getting fun little images the whole video. But let's go ahead and get started. All of these books were either 4 or 5 stars, and I'm going to talk about my 4 stars first and then my 5 stars second. So let's go. The first book I want to talk about is The Revolution of Birdie Randolph by Brandy Colbert. I've heard people say Colbert. Is that how you say that last name all the time, or is that just for Stephen Colbert? I don't actually know. Anyway, I kind of just picked this book up on a whim. I was kind of just feeling a young adult contemporary, and it was in February, which is Black History Month, so I was primarily trying to read from Black authors. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. You know, I've heard decent things about this author in this book, like I'd heard little things, and it was so good. It really was just like a cute, mostly lighthearted, summery young adult contemporary, which for some reason I really needed in that moment. It is about Birdie Randolph, who, do I remember what happens in this book? I almost only remember feelings and not really the plot, which I think is more of what this book is about anyway. But it's basically her trying to come to terms with some new information she learns about her family and trying to become her own person, and her mother is very strict, so she's kind of trying to get out under her mom's thumb a little bit and live her own life. I believe she's 17. I think it's the summer before her senior year of high school, so she's, you know, starting to really feel like an adult and learning what that means, and it was just so good. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It was phenomenal. And the next book I'm going to talk about that really surprised me was We're Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. This is her memoir. I listened to the audiobook, which is what I almost always do with celebrity memoirs, because it's almost always them narrating it, and I love that. I love hearing celebrities talk about their own lives. And I don't know anything about her really. I mean, I do now because I read her book. But before that, I was like, yeah, I've seen a couple movies that she's been in. She's married to Dwayne Wade. I don't really know anything about Gabrielle Union other than that. So learning about her life and how she grew up as a young Black girl and then growing into a Black woman and struggling in Hollywood, struggling in her younger life, was so interesting. So if you even have like a passing interest in Gabrielle Union, sort of like I did, I suggest you read this book, because you will learn a lot and you will experience some really enlightening and thought-provoking conversations. Not really conversations, because obviously it's not like actually a dialogue with Gabrielle Union, although that would be very cool. But I don't know, it was just so much more than what I thought it was. You know, I never really know what to expect going into celebrity memoirs, and I'm so glad that I read this one and kind of got Gabrielle Union on my radar, so highly recommend. I should stop saying that. These are all books that I really liked, so I recommend all of them. The next book that really surprised me was The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. I love the Folk of the Air trilogy, so I liked Holly Black, but I didn't like her earlier books that are set in like that same fairy world, the ones that came out in like the early 2000s, and they were just bad. So I didn't really know how to approach this book. It is a standalone about vampires. I've been feeling vampires lately. We're sort of entering a vampire renaissance, I feel like. Like after Twilight and all the Twilight hype died down, which this book came out during the Twilight hype. I think it came out in like 2012, so very like Twilight era. But after all the Twilight hype died down, nobody really wanted to do vampires anymore, I feel like. And now we're getting more into vampire books and new vampire releases, which I'm so excited for. But I was like feeling vampires. I didn't want to reread Twilight for obvious reasons. And I'd never read this, so I was like, you know what, let me give it a go. And it was so good. It's set in a world where vampirism is almost a disease, which I think is how it is in a lot of places, or a lot of like books and TV shows and stuff. But the way that Holly Black approached this was just like sort of magical and whimsical, but like dark whimsical. If you are interested in vampire books at all and you have been missing sort of that Twilight era mumbo jumbo and you haven't read The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, I suggest you give it a try because it was a pretty fun ride. And then the next book is another one that also had girl in the title, which is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. I've read from Claire Legrand before. I read Furyborn. That's the first book in that trilogy, right? I think the first one is Furyborn, and then I tried to read the second one, and I kind of just like wasn't in the mood for it. Not that it wasn't good, but I DNF'd it, and I'll come back to it eventually. But I was sort of like, maybe Claire Legrand's writing just isn't for me because I hadn't like loved her, gosh, what's it called? The Imperium trilogy. I think that's what it's called. So I hadn't like loved it. Like I thought it was fine, but I wasn't like super into it. But Sawkill Girls is this creepy, paranormal, like culty, monster fighting, like badass girls standing up against the patriarchy and like getting shit done. Also, I like horror books now, and this is like pretty horror-y, so I was vibing with it. I don't really want to say anything more about the plot other than like those buzzwords that I just threw out there, because I feel like this is one of those books where it's good to go in with very little expectations. So if those buzzwords are things that you're into, you should read it. And then the next book that really surprised me was My True Love Gave to Me by Stephanie Perkins. It's a YA anthology edited by Stephanie Perkins with a bunch of YA authors putting in short stories around Christmas time, although they're not all Christmas related. Some are New Year's, some are Hanukkah, which I really loved. So I like that there's, representation of different religions celebrating winter holidays. And, anthologies, I feel like this is kind of the standard opinion that often anthologies are kind of 3 stars, because there's obviously going to be some stories from some authors that are really good and other stories by some authors that are not so good. But I felt like there were way more hits than misses in what is it called? My True Love Gave to Me. That's right. Yeah, there are way more hits than misses in that book. They were just, for the most part, very, very, very good little short stories from YA authors, and some I had read from before, some I hadn't. So that was a really good mix of, being able to experience some new authors and be like, oh, hey, I really like this short story. I probably will want to pick up one of their full-length novels at some point. And then obviously stepping back into familiar writing with familiar authors that I've read from before and I've already really loved. So overall, it was really great. I know we're sort of out of the holiday season now, but if you're one of those people who likes to read Christmassy or winter holiday books at any time of year, read it whenever you want. If you don't like to do that and just want to read them around Christmas time, which is what I like to do, then save it for Christmas 2021. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And then my final 4-star book that really surprised me was Winter Counts by David Heska Wanbley-Wyden. He has a lot of names, so I wanted to make sure that I said them all. This is an adult thriller, like mystery thriller, set on a Lakota reservation. And the main character, the narrator, is sort of performing vigilante justice on the reservation because a lot of times tribal authorities don't have, or tribal police don't have the authority to prosecute as many crimes as they would want, and federal authorities choose not to. Basically, they decide it's not worth their time, so then justice isn't served. And that is a commentary on real life things that happen on real life reservations. We follow Virgil, who's the main character, as he is trying to figure out who is bringing drugs onto the reservation and how he can stop it, and getting into some reservation politics and sort of his romantic relationships as well, and his family relationships. It was so different from anything I've ever read before. Usually I don't like mysteries and thrillers that are directly like, this person tries to solve crime, because that's just kind of boring to me, but because this was set up in such a unique way, I still really enjoyed it. So if you're one of those people, which I also think is sort of a popular opinion on BookTube, I've heard way more people say that they don't like traditional crime thrillers, or like, this detective is solving this mystery. I feel like I've heard a lot more people say that than people say that they do like that trope. But if you don't like that, I would suggest giving this book a try anyway, because it has such a different twist on it and a different spin. Okay, and the rest of the books that I'm talking about in this video are going to be 5-star books that surprised me. You can also sort of consider these to be honorable mentions for my best books of 2020 video, which will be the next one going up, so keep an eye out for that. And the first one I want to talk about is Race to the Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This book came out like almost exactly a year ago. It came out in January 2020, and I think it's under Rick Riordan's imprint of middle grade books being written sort of similar in the vein of Percy Jackson, but about different gods and goddesses and mythologies, where you know, middle grade characters are kind of thrust into the middle of the action and you know, go on wacky adventures. So this follows Najoni Begay, who can see and sense monsters. Her mother was killed when she was younger by monsters, and so she's been afraid ever since. But monsters come back into her life, and she has to go on a mission to save her father. And it was so good. You guys, it was so good. The writing is impeccable. It was my first Rebecca Roanhorse book that I read, and I love her writing now. I read another one of her books later on in the year, and I'm going to continue reading her books. She is such a versatile author, like writing young adult, middle grade, adult. Rebecca Roanhorse can do anything, and I have never really fallen in love with a middle grade book before. I've thought some were good. I usually bump up the star rating when I'm reading them, because I understand that I'm not really the target audience, and so I feel like it's not fair to sort of penalize a book for being very, like, kiddie when that's the point. And, you know, there were some parts where it was like that in Race to the Sun, especially with the humor, which I think you find a lot in middle grade, but I still enjoyed it so much, and it didn't bother me. I was still, like, vibing with it. I was just, like, having a great time. So I was expecting not to really love it because it was a middle grade, and Rebecca Roanhorse proved me wrong, and it was amazing. The next 5-star book that really surprised me was I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. This is a young adult contemporary about a girl who joins a singing and dancing competition show in order to become the next K-pop star. So whoever wins gets to go to, like, the K-pop training camp and is in training to become a proper K-pop star. And she's plus size, so that's something that has always been a point of contention between her and her mother, and a point of insecurity for her, but she, like, has kind of gotten over it by the time of the book, and she just, like, sings and dances her heart out, and it was so good. That it wasn't heavy-handed in terms of how it was talking about body positivity, but it was also a really good message throughout the book, and it was so fun. I'm not a big K-pop person. I have listened to Blackpink, but that's pretty much it. And that was kind of spurred on by this book, because I just loved sort of learning about the culture, and while I think the K-pop training culture is a little bit damaging and a little bit scary, it's also so interesting, and especially that this Korean American girl was able to even get on the show in the first place, I think speaks volumes and was really good. And I love Blackpink now, by the way, and so if anyone has any recommendations for other songs from other artists, let me know. I would love to listen to some more K-pop. I don't think I will ever be, like, a K-pop stan, but I'll listen to the music. I'll have a good time. I don't know, and I wasn't expecting to love this book because I didn't know anything about K-pop, and I thought it would just be, you know, like a fun YA contemporary, and it is, but it's also so much more than that, and it was great. It was just great. The next 5-star book that really surprised me was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I'd heard really mixed reviews of this book. It is about a girl, very much reminds me of the Wayward Children series, or at least the way that it was described it does. It is about this girl who starts discovering these doors to other worlds. And that's basically all I knew about it going into it. And I wasn't really going to read it. But then one of the Goodreads like book clubs that I'm in, does this game like every like season. We did like, I think they called it Fright Night, so it was like Halloween themed. And you could earn points for your team, and you would get more points if you were reading the group read or if you were buddy reading. And this book was a group read, and I was like, well, I want to get them damn points because I'm very competitive. So I read it, and I was so surprised. The writing was so beautiful and lush and whimsical, and this is whimsical in the way that you normally think of whimsy, not like dark whimsy like the other book earlier. It was so good. A lot of people have complained about it being slow, and I can see that, but when books are written this beautifully, I'm okay with them being slow because I like to just like sit and enjoy the prose. And I was listening to the audiobook, so I was just like hearing the audiobook narrator talk to me. It was January Lavoie, who is known for narrating the Diviners audiobooks, and she's amazingly talented. And it's kind of funny, the main character in this book is also named January, so that's kind of a fun thing. I will say, I will give a disclaimer. This book is written by a white woman. The main character is not white. She's a person of color. So that's part of why I didn't want to read it either, or I was sort of hesitant because I'd heard some iffy things on how people felt about that. I feel like it's not really my place to say it's okay or it was done well. So I would encourage you to look up Own Voices reviews. So I would just say, like, know that going in. But the writing itself and the story itself, beautiful. Okay, and the last book that I want to talk about that was super surprising to me. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. I was actually very scared because I wanted to love it, and I was scared that I wouldn't, and then I did. And that is The Rise of Kyoshi by S.C. This is the first book in, I believe, a duology of prequel novels about Avatar Kyoshi from the Avatar universe, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Kyoshi is a boss bitch. I love her. And this book is really her origin story of explaining how she came to be the Avatar, you know, what happened, all of the politics of the Avatar universe when she was the Avatar. I swear she lives forever. She lives like 400 years. So she's only like 2 avatars before Aang, which is wild. But yeah, you get to learn so much about the Avatar universe as well, and you get so much more world building, especially seeing what the world was like before the 100 Years' War, where the Fire Nation attacked. And I loved it so much. I was so scared that it would be like a soulless cash grab. Like, very obviously, like, we're just doing this for the money. We don't care about the Avatar universe. But it was very obvious that the author put a lot of effort in and worked with the creators of the show to flesh out the universe, flesh out Kyoshi's story as a young woman. So good. It was so good. The only reason I don't have a physical copy of this, because I gave it to my sister for Christmas because it was that good. I was like, here, you need this. I'll buy another copy of my own at some point, but you need to read this right now. So, yeah, it's amazing. If you like Avatar like I do, like, it's my favorite show of all time, probably. Maybe second. It flip-flops between Avatar and The Good Place. But either way, if you love Avatar, or if you even like Avatar, if you are interested in learning more about the world and the magic system and the politics and all that good stuff, read this book. Please read it. And then the second book is already out. Like I said, I believe it's only a duology, but if we got more books, I don't think I'd be mad at it. Also, Kyoshi's bisexual. They don't use the word bisexual, probably because that doesn't exist in the Avatar universe, but she shows clear attraction to men, and then she does get into a relationship with a woman. So if you're looking for some queer rep, particularly sapphic, because that's like the main relationship in the book, but also a bisexual main character, like, yes, this is the book. It is. That's the book for you. So these are all of the books that really surprised me this year. I'm so glad that I read so many books that I was pleasantly surprised about and I could gush about them to you. And my next video is going to be my best books of the year, and I'm really excited to gush about books in that video too. If you've read any of these books and want to share your thoughts, I would love to hear them, or if I've inspired you to read any of them, I would love to hear that too. As well, if you want to share what your most favorite books were of the year, I would love to hear that as well. So leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you want to be my friend on any other social media platforms. All my links will be down below to Goodreads and Twitter. Slide into my DMs, let me know what's up, and I'll see you next time. Bye!